Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, homecoming at Missouri Southern brings a lot of people to campus, graduates as well as current students. We'll also feature some special recognition. And today we're visiting with two people receiving special honors in the fall of 2016. We begin with Dr. Hal Bodon as the 2016 Lionhearted Award recipient. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure being here.
Your reaction to receiving the Lionhearted Award, what was your reaction when they called you and said, we'd like to honor you?
Well, my first reaction was, what in the Sam Hill is the Lionhearted Award? First, I thought it was a Cowardly Lion Award. That would have probably fit better. But then eventually I thought that might have been a service award, and so I was rather pleased. I thought that was very kind of them.
And of course, this follows other recognition at Missouri Southern. A few years ago, we visited when you went to the Athletics Hall of Fame. So,
right, yeah. That was nice as well.
And for people who are familiar with the soccer program at Missouri Southern, the soccer field's named after you as well.
Right. They just keep pouring it on.
Well, your career, for people who are watching, may not be familiar. You started here at Missouri Southern. When people think of soccer, you're the person who really got us going for Missouri Southern.
Yeah, 1972.
Mm-hmm. And how did you say we need to have a soccer team at Missouri Southern? Where did those ideas come from?
Well, you know, having been born and raised in Germany, that's the only sport that we participated in. Mm-hmm. Actually, there were two sports. When the weather was nice, we played soccer outdoors. When the weather was bad, we played ping pong indoors. So those were the two, and most Germans got pretty good at those two sports. And so when we came over here in 1952, we tried to play soccer whenever we could. And I joined a soccer team in Salt Lake. And then when I attended Brigham Young University, we started the soccer program there. Mm-hmm. And then after we graduated, eventually I made my way here to Missouri Southern, where I was hired. And then when I saw all this wide open spaces, I thought that can't be true.
And all that grass behind the building in the student center is open for a field.
So I thought maybe we had to put some goals there, and pretty soon there were certainly students that wanted to participate, and so we had an intramural soccer program, and that went very well. And then in 1976, we approached the Board of Regents, and they said, well, we can't take it into the athletic program, but you can certainly form a club. Mm-hmm. And so we did that, and that took off really well. And so eventually, they made it into the athletic department. Right. But by that time, we had already attracted very good soccer players from around St. Louis and Sedalia and Tulsa and Kansas City. And so once we got started with the athletic program, we had a pretty good team, and we started off playing good teams and did quite well.
So you found a lot of talent locally or regionally to play on these teams.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right, and we had some very good teams in the area. And so those players that had heard of Missouri Southern, they had choices. They could either stay in their local college teams, or they could come here. Mm-hmm. We did quite well recruiting, because they saw we had very good facilities, and they had heard of our performances and records that we had accumulated, and so they wanted to come here.
Great. Now, we've heard a lot about growth of soccer in the United States, and this kind of follows along with that trend over those years, that it was growing in popularity nationwide as well.
It just boggles my mind. It's incredible, you know. I mean, the pro league and women's pro league, and every time you turn around, you see high school soccer, and then you see little league soccer. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in 2000, when we moved to Ivins, Utah, they I asked the city council, I said, would it be okay, would you buy me 2 goals, soccer balls, uniforms, because there's that beautiful empty space behind the elementary school. You know, that really should be a soccer field. And the mayor said, yes, if you can get 100 of our kids to participate, we'll do all that for you. So I announced in the paper, made a poster, and put it by the side of the street. There will be registration for Little League Soccer. And we got between 250 and 300 kids to
they
sign
were ready
up.
to go.
And so I told the mayor, I said, we've got almost 300 kids signed. He said, okay, a promise is a promise. You've got your goals and you've got your field. And that's how it went. I mean, everywhere. You know, the kids just love it. They love to kick something around, you know.
And of course, it's great exercise for those kids as well. Getting them out and enjoying
and the parents love it. And so it's caught on really well.
Now, working with the college students like you did on a collegiate team, did you see the difference that athletics made for those young men who were playing as well as being students?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and now they have the opportunity also to play professional, you know, to play for the United States, for FIFA teams in World Cup, and the women are ranked between number 1 and 5. I mean, it's just really outstanding.
So a lot more people interested in soccer today.
Yes,
really
aren't
growth
they?
and so forth.
Yeah.
Right. What about the academic side of of course, you were a professor here at Missouri Southern.
Right.
And talk a little bit about the courses you taught on the academic side.
I've always taught the French and German. French was my major, and German was my minor. Of course, having been born and raised in Germany, so that was a natural.
Right.
That was my native tongue. And French was my major for my bachelor's as well as for my PhD. And so that was also natural for me to teach those 2 languages.
Now, going beyond the classroom, I know you were involved with things like Foreign Language Field Day, where you brought people to campus.
Right. While I was at Brigham Young University, I was involved in the Foreign Language Field Day, and that's where I became acquainted with it. And where several hundred high school students from the area came once a year together, and where they were tested and where they had a chance to show their prowess in various areas of the language. And I saw how excited they were. And they were handed prizes and certificates, and I thought, why can't we do that at Missouri Southern? And so we started the Foreign Language Field Day here, and the kids here were just as excited as they were in Provo, Utah, and so we did the same thing. We had certificates for them, we had trophies, we had little gifts for them, and we did exactly the same thing, and that became very popular as well.
Right, and that encourages them to continue learning from high school.
Yes,
and come on through the
they
college.
see there's someplace they should go by the end of the year, and so they look forward to that, and that became very popular.
I know you were also involved in recognizing outstanding students. So we have something called the Honors Convocation.
Right,
How did
the
those
Honors
ideas-
Convocation became very popular too, because we always recognized the athletes. They had various venues where they would be recognized either as all-stars or the various all-star teams, but there was not much for the academically succeeding students. And so we thought maybe we ought to recognize them as well. And so we went to the various departments and said, would you pick out your top student in different areas? And then we'll have an honors convocation. And then we'll, once towards the end of the year, we'll present them the same way we do with the athletes. And so in each of the departments, they did that, and they came together, and we recognized them and we had certificates for them. And this was the outstanding student in this department, the outstanding student in this department. And so that became very popular too, and rightly so.
Right.
You know, it's just as important to be a good drama student or a good drafting student or a good student in this department, and like it is to be a good football player, a good basketball player. And any time you succeed in anything, you need to be recognized.
Recognize them for their accomplishments.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I know that you have been very busy since retirement. You've been back to Missouri Southern within the last few years. When you think about Missouri Southern coming back to this region, what comes to mind as far as your memories of Missouri Southern? Anything stand out as far as this university or this school?
Well, I was at Missouri Southern for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And I only wish that my memory were better. I'm now 80 years old, and that's been 45 years ago when I started here, and I practically raised my family here. I have nothing but pleasant memories about Missouri Southern. I had great supervisors, our athletic director, and then my department chairman, mm-hmm. and then my office mates. All these people, they helped so much in helping me to practically raise me in the profession. So I was very grateful to all of these people, and my students as well. You know, we had good students. I really loved my students, and you know, when I read about and hear about the difficulties some of the universities have with their students and what's going on, so I can't even imagine that happening at Missouri Southern, because we got along well. You know, everybody knew what their place was and why they were there, and so I have nothing but good things to say and good things that I remember.
Yeah. And I know the saying that a teacher or a professor touch a student's life forever and for their lifetime. Do you feel that when you hear about what your former students, your graduates were doing, that you've touched their life, you've played a role for those students?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? And same with my players. Mm-hmm. You know, I just 2 weeks ago, I heard from one of my students who is now in Virginia. He just retired from the telephone company. He retired from the telephone company. Yeah, so he's over 60 years old. I said, what? 60 years old? Holy smokes, you know. I remember him when I recruited him. And the other one, you know, just has another baby coming, you know, and he already has 3 or 4 children. You know, it's just amazing how these kids eventually grow up and they do well, and mm-hmm. and it really pleases me when they say, "You've done so much for me. When you recruited me, nobody else wanted to recruit me, but you kept after me. And when we came to Southern, you know, you treated us okay, and we just really felt good about going to school here and playing for the team and so forth. That makes you feel good. Even though you just treated them like decent human beings, mm-hmm. kids that needed to be helped along the way."
That's great. Well, Dr. Bodon, I know Missouri Southern is saying thank you through this award, and we'd like to thank you as well here in the television and the communication department, and welcoming you back once again to Missouri Southern.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And I'd like to invite the audience to stay tuned, because we're going to visit with the Outstanding Alumnus Award recipient after this. Stay tuned.
Missouri Southern State University invites you to explore Great Britain as a themed semester in fall 2016. This semester features something for everyone, from music and films to presentations about a wide variety of topics ranging from history to current events. More than 40 activities are planned. All are open to the public, free of charge. Find out about the schedule by visiting the International Studies website at Missouri Southern or contacting the office for a printed schedule. Explore Great Britain as Missouri Southern brings the world a little closer to home.
Hello and welcome back. And I'm glad to introduce in the second half of the program Kevin Hooks, our outstanding alumnus in 2016 at Missouri Southern. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And homecoming is a time where a lot of people come back to campus. Special homecoming for you this year.
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited.
Tell me about your reaction when you found out you were selected for this award.
You know, it felt like it was one of those full circle moments. You know, I came to Missouri Southern in 1988 to play soccer, and just a struggling young kid from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who really didn't understand what college and university was about because no one in my family had ever gone to college. And so, coming here and over the 4 years while I was here playing soccer and going, through the academics, it's one of those things that you look back on now and you go, wow, that's really what started it all. And so more than 20 years later to be back here with this prestigious award is fantastic.
So you'd say Missouri Southern really had an impact on you and where you're at today in your career?
Oh, without question. I literally had a choice. My father and my mother, they didn't understand college. They hadn't gone to college. My father was trying to pressure me to go to the Army. I know I'm not very good at following orders, so I knew that was going to be a challenge. And so I had picked up playing soccer in high school my sophomore year, just because I knew that I was going to end up having to go to the Army if I didn't find a scholarship. And so Coach Sperlin met me the summer after my senior year and offered me a partial scholarship if I wanted to come in here and work hard. And so, I just came down the road a couple hours and didn't know what I was getting into, but about a year into it, it was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. Now you mentioned work hard. The role of a student athlete it's a special challenge for people to come in. You have your games, you have studying, a lot of things involved.
And it was particularly difficult for someone who, like I said, I left home with a pillow, a blanket that my dad let me take off my bed, and $20 that my girlfriend gave me. And so that's all I had when I came here, and I got a ride in the back of a truck for somebody that was driving this way. And so when I got here, it was just a big culture shock for me. But, the one thing Coach said was, like you said, you work hard, but because I had a partial scholarship, I had to get a part-time job. Right. So not only was I worried about practice, maintaining that part of and then going to managing the academics, but then working a part-time job at the same time made it a little bit a different experience. By the time I was a junior in here, it just became normal. It was normal. You go to school, you go to practice, you go to work, you go to the games. It was like my life. And so
time management became
time management was a big deal. And frankly, I wasn't that great at time management, but it did teach me, to prioritize things. It was one of those things where, although I didn't have the best GPA, it was one of those things that taught me, things are going to become a priority and become more and more difficult to manage if you don't understand this time management thing better as you get older. And so over the years, I've definitely, it's something I've definitely prided myself in.
Great. And of course, the academic side, we're talking about communication. We're in the television station at Missouri Southern. So tell me about that aspect of your experience, academics.
The funny thing about it is I was always a fairly decent public speaker, just, even through high school because of speech and debate in high school. And so I gravitated, my first 2 years, all I did was take classes I thought were interesting. And so that's really what led me down the path of a speech communication degree. Because I just picked classes I really liked, with the exception of the minimum requirements.
Your core requirements.
Yeah, the core requirements. But then it ended up as Mr. Massa and I, who was who was a professor who was probably most influential on me at the time. He was really directing me and really taking an interest in me and my potential. And so we really had a good time looking at the electives that I had chosen, and it all added up to speech communications. It was pretty easy.
Now, applying that while you're in school, opportunity to not only in the classroom, did you have other clubs, organizations that you say you're putting that type of thing to work?
Yeah, I mean, really, I just didn't have much time for anything except by the time I was a junior, we actually started working toward establishing fraternities here. Right. And so I joined Kappa Alpha Psi here, and we started it here my junior year. And so that was something else we put to this, we created, which was really fun. But then just all the other things that young students go through, the challenges that we have and, how we voice our concerns to campus administration and all of those things. So we were involved in a whole lot of things. I don't know if you remember back then, MLK Day was not a holiday recognized. And so we did what we thought was a sit-in, which was really interesting to look back on. I wrote an article for the paper, and we decided that we were going to have a protest, and so we sat in, and it must have been 6 hours. we were committed. we had a 6-hour sit-in that day, but it was fantastic. It was the kind of stories that we still share, 20 years later about these would-be kids who wanted to make a difference. But you know, it was one of the things that the institution was open to, and our teachers really supported us when we wanted to do stuff like that.
Now, do you still keep in touch with a lot of your fellow students, your fellow grads, the people you did that?
I do. In fact, several of my friends will be here today. I have a friend who's my college roommate, Sean James, who played for the football team. He's going to be here from New York, and he's in finance in New York City. There's a guy we called Beef who lives in St. Louis, and his name is Keith. And Keith was like, he was sort of the patriarch of young black kids back then. He was this bigger than life gentleman who had been in school, you know, for his 5th year. He was working on, you know, getting prepared for a master's degree, and so he wanted to get extra hours in. Right. And so he'll be here as well. But so several people.
So those college friendships last truly forever.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So after you completed your degree at Missouri Southern, you had to go out into, quote, the real world.
Right.
How did you decide which path to take after you walked out of here with
Oh, it was definitely circuitous. I went from here to, I worked at Walmart first. One of the best trainings I ever had. I went through the Walmart management training program, and I started at the Walmart that was on Rangeline at the time. Right. And actually was hired by Bud Walton, who came into that Walmart while I was just a cashier, working toward getting into the management training program with a nephew that was getting ready to go to college. And so they were buying stuff for the nephew, and he met me, and I told him I was trying to get into the management training program, but there was hiring freeze. And he said, and his exact words were, hiring freeze, smiring freeze. Don't worry about it. You're taken care of. You have a beautiful smile. And that Monday following, I was in the program. Wow. Literally, he made a phone call. And so I went through that training. After a couple of years working at Walmart, I went to work for State Farm, which is really what put me on the trajectory that landed me where I am today. So I managed a national gifting portfolio. So basically, I went around the nonprofits and looked at nonprofits that really had the interest that was similar to the State Farm's needs, and donated money to them.
So paying back the community.
Exactly, and it was perfect. So as a result of that, I was asked to serve on the National Urban League Board of Trustees in 1997, which was one of the organizations we donated the largest sum to under my tenure. Right. And so I served on that Board of Trustees from 97 to 2004. And while there, I created an organization called the Urban League Young Professionals, which was an organization whose design was to reach out to under 40-year-olds who wanted to give back to their community and give them a platform to do so. Exactly. And so that led me into, you know, for my private life, so I stayed involved with that. Right. While I left State Farm and went into the entertainment industry and did that for the next years.
Yeah, right. But that was, you say entertainment industry for people, that's Hollywood, that type of work.
That's exactly right. So I was one of the early pioneers of product placement and branded entertainment. So I represented about 110 brands back then, from everywhere from Cadillac to McDonald's, to several watch brands, to clothing brands, et cetera. And so our job was to put those products in the film and television shows that we worked on and get them to show up on screen.
So when someone picks up a drink, it's going to be a certain brand of drink that they're drinking.
That's exactly right. So for instance, when Coke did American Idol, our company represented Pepsi. Right, and so you know, we didn't win that negotiation, but at the same time, it'll give you a sense of, you know, it went from just giving away free product and it showing up to these multi-million-dollar, multi-year deals like the Coke and American Idol.
They're tied together as
exactly, and with it very specifically focused on making sure the brand was represented in its true sense on the television show or in the film. And so we pioneered actually developing, you know, what that looks like, coming up with the measurement protocols for it to make sure that we understood how to measure it, then therefore how to value it. Right. And so I did that for a very long time.
Great. And now you're in Las Vegas. Yes. And you mentioned the Urban League is kind of taking you to the Urban League again.
Exactly. So at some point along the way, I realized that, you know, I really wanted to do something to give back to the community. And as a result of that, my relationship with the Urban League was still something that was ongoing. And I found out that the Urban League in Las Vegas was looking for a CEO. And so I put my hat in the ring. Right. And you know, almost 4 years later, here I am. And we went from a struggling affiliate, one of 93 in the country. It was struggling to now we're the #1 affiliate in the country. We've got the largest number of employees, the largest number of programs, and the largest revenue.
Give me me some examples of some programs that you might have that people say, give an example, what do you do with Urban League?
Our biggest program we do a job training program. So we teach people soft skills that they need in order, people that are coming out of the system, people who fell through the cracks, and we're looking at it as a tool to solve this challenge of poverty. And so we do that. We run programs that really focus on helping mothers who get off of welfare, helping them with that first big new expense from when you get on your own, when you start drawing a paycheck. The first new expense is childcare if you've been on welfare for a long time. And so what we do is we pay childcare for them for the first 6 months. But during that time, we train them on how to manage their money so they can be prepared to take over that new expense.
Now, looking at your service giving back to the community, what kind of words of advice would you give to today's students, or to prepare them for the future, and not only get your degree but give back to your community?
I think it's really important. I live by this Socratic truth. The unexamined life is not worth living. And so, make sure that you take a self-assessment and what's really important to you. And I think when most people do that, they realize that not only building wealth for themselves is important, but making sure they create a pathway for other people to follow them down that path is really important.
And make a difference in someone's life.
Without
make a
question.
In the world.
I mean, it's certainly someone like me who came up in the environment that I came up in. For me not to give back, I think would be a tragedy. And so for me, it's important for me to spend whatever years that I have left focused on making sure that other people have the opportunities that were given to me. Particularly the opportunity was given to me by Southern, because I didn't really, frankly, deserve a soccer scholarship. I was a good athlete, but I hadn't spent enough time playing. And Coach Spurlin saw potential, and he took advantage of that.
Now, Missouri Southern has changed a lot over the years. When you come back to campus like this,
it's so
what
different.
are your reactions?
It's so different. I mean, I look at just across the street where the dorms are now. Like, the dorms we had were nothing
just
compared to this.
Just a couple of those buildings we see
today.
today.
It's fantastic to see. And there used to be a little corner store. Mike's store used to be across the street. That's where most of us would eat. Like, we'd go to this little convenience store, and he'd make hot dogs and chili and all that, and we'd have that for dinner most nights. It's amazing to see how different it is.
And Missouri Southern continuing to grow. Do you feel a sense of community support as well?
Without question. And fortunately for me, I found my family here, so I come back often. And some of the friendships that I made here locally are still here. I can still go to the local places and meet friends. Even this morning, I had breakfast with an old college soccer player at a bruncheonette, which was fantastic.
So not only keep in touch with your students, but your soccer peers as well.
Yeah.
So tying that together. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming. And kind of a final word, people say, what are you most proud of as far as Missouri Southern? If that's your point of pride.
I wrote an article about this once, but really my point of pride is the education that I got here allows me to compete competitively and favorably with any of the Ivy League people that I have working for me. I have people work for me that have MIT, they're double masters from MIT. I have a Harvard lawyer working for me. I have a Stanford CPA working for me. And what I learned here is competitive with any of those institutions. And I've been able to demystify that whole Ivy League, East Coast sort of ideology about what education is. Education here is competitive with any education.
Great. Well, Kevin, I'd like to thank you for taking some time while you're here to visit with us and having a chance for the audience to hear from you as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Great. Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.